Creek Nation Territory, 1895. 12 armed outlaws positioned in trees and behind rocks. Bass Reeves rides alone into the canyon, Winchester loaded, two Colt .45s holstered, four sets of iron shackles hanging from his saddle horn, catching the sunlight like a promise. The Jim Webb gang, 3 murders, $500 per head, dead or alive. The first shot cracks past his head. His gray horse Domino doesn't even flinch. Reeves dismounts, calm, starts counting muzzle flashes. 8 seconds. He's already identified 7 positions. "I never shot a man I didn't have to," he said once. But what he does next defies every tactical rule. 15 minutes later, the canyon is silent. 8 bodies, 4 men in chains. The shackles clink as he rides out. Bloodstained, perfectly used. What nobody knows is how one man survived odds no lawman should beat. 3 days earlier, Fort Smith, Arkansas, smelled like river mud and whiskey. Bass Reeves sat at his kitchen table under lamplight, running a cloth across iron shackles the way some men clean guns. 4 sets laid out in front of him. His wife Nellie stood in the doorway, holding a telegram she hadn't read yet, but already knew meant blood. He was 57 years old, appointed U.S. Deputy Marshal in 1875 by Judge Isaac Parker, the hanging judge who'd sent over 160 men to the gallows. Reeves spoke Creek, Cherokee, Seminole, could track a man through running water, had arrested over 3,000 fugitives across Indian Territory, 14 men dead by his hand, all justified, all clean. The central secret nobody understood. Reeves never walked into a fight he hadn't already won in his head. Nellie set the telegram down. "Webb gang, Creek Nation, 12 men." Reeves didn't look up, just kept polishing. His children watched from the stairs, silent, trained not to ask questions. The shackles caught lamplight. 4 sets. Reeves had already done the math. Webb sent a message 2 days ago through a creek runner. "Bring chains, lawman." It wasn't a taunt. It was tactical. Webb wanted Reeves to know he was expected. Jim Webb was wanted for 3 murders in 2 territories. $500 bounty. Escaped Fort Smith custody twice. Once by bribing a guard, once by killing one. The gang holed up in a canyon near the Creek-Cherokee border, a natural fortress with sight lines for a quarter mile. Wanted posters showed Webb's face, sharp jaw, cold eyes, the kind of man who smiled before pulling a trigger. The surface story said Webb was desperate, cornered, making his last stand. The hidden truth was simpler. Webb had an inside man at Fort Smith, someone feeding him marshal movements, warrant schedules, backup assignments. That's how he knew Reeves would come alone. That's how he knew exactly when. The gang spent 2 days positioning, 12 men with Winchesters scattered in trees and behind boulders, overlapping fields of fire. They oiled their rifles in silence, checked ammunition. Webb walked the canyon floor himself, studying angles. To him, it was perfect. 1 marshal, 12 shooters, no escape routes. The story goes, Webb stood at the canyon entrance and said, "When he rides in, let him get to the center. Then we end the legend." What Webb didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Reeves had already mapped this canyon 6 months earlier while tracking a Creek horse thief. The ride from Fort Smith took 2 days. Reeves crossed the Arkansas River at dawn, rode through Creek settlements where people knew his face and stepped aside without speaking. His gray horse Domino moved steady, bred for gunfire, trained not to spook. Reeves checked his Winchester exactly 12 times during the ride, counted the shackles every hour. 4 sets, 8 cuffs. The rhythm of iron clinking against saddle leather became a metronome. Dust rose in clouds. Heat pressed down. Cardinals called from cottonwood trees. The hidden truth riding with him, Reeves had sent his own scout, a Creek tracker named Thomas, 2 weeks earlier. Thomas reported back the canyon layout, the gang's positions, Webb's confidence. Reeves studied the information the way a chess player studies a board. He knew where the shooters would be, knew the blind spots, knew that Webb expected him to ride in fast or cautious, but never deliberately. The shackles kept time. Clink, clink, clink. By the second night camped under stars, Reeves cleaned his guns and spoke to Domino in Creek. "We walk in slow. Let them think they have us. Then we show them what certainty looks like. At dawn, he stopped exactly 1 mile from the canyon entrance, checked the loads one final time, touched each set of shackles, then rode toward the trap like a man keeping an appointment. High noon. The canyon entrance framed him like a target. Reeves rode in deliberately slow, Winchester across his lap, shackles swinging. 12 outlaws watched through rifle sights. Webb crouched behind a boulder 30 yards in, finger on trigger. Reeves was known for walking into danger the way other men walked into church. Steady, certain, unbothered. The first shot came from an oak tree to his left. The bullet cracked past his head close enough to feel the heat. Domino didn't flinch. Reeves dismounted, calm, started counting muzzle flashes like a man counting change. 1, 2, 3, 4. He identified 7 positions in 8 seconds. Tree line, boulder cluster, ridge above. His voice cut through the canyon, steady and loud, talking to his horse in English now so they'd all hear. Easy, Domino. Just men with guns. Nothing we ain't seen before. The human element that broke them. Confidence. Reeves moved like he knew something they didn't. Webb's gang expected panic, running, return fire. Instead, Reeves counted shots, analyzed terrain, identified exact positions. He dismounted instead of retreating because the canyon walls would funnel sound, create confusion, make 12 shooters think there were more guns than one. The mystery nobody solved until later. Why he chose that exact spot to stand. It was the only position with cover from 3 angles and clear sight lines to Webb's boulder. 8 seconds of calculation. Reeves stood beside Domino, using the horse as partial cover, studying the canyon like a battlefield diagram. Rocks, trees, escape routes. His legendary skill, photographic memory for landscapes. He'd ridden this canyon once before and remembered every stone, every tree, every shadow. The outlaws thought he was trapped. False certainty. They had numbers. They had position. They had surprise. But Reeves had already won. He raised his Winchester. 1 shot. Clean. The tree sniper dropped, body tumbling through branches, rifle clattering to rocks below. Then Reeves did something that defied tactics. He shouted Webb's name. Jim Webb, I know you're behind the big boulder. I know you sent that message. I know you think you're smart. Psychological warfare. The canyon fell silent. You could hear wind through cottonwoods. Then chaos. 3 more shots from different positions. Panic fire not aimed. Reeves dropped behind Domino, rolled left to a rock cluster. 2 more shots from his Winchester. 2 more bodies. The gang started shouting to each other, positions exposed by their own voices. Where is he? I can't see him. Webb, what do we do? If you're hooked now, wait till you see what happens next. Because what broke them wasn't marksmanship. It was the sound of iron shackles hitting stone, thrown deliberately to create the illusion of movement where there was none. 3 minutes. That's how long the firefight lasted. Reeves used the canyon walls like a chessboard, moving between cover points, forcing the shooters to adjust, to expose themselves, to fire at sounds instead of targets. Public fact. Reeves was ambidextrous, could shoot rifle or pistol with either hand. He fired from the left, reloaded right, moved before return fire arrived. The key ordinary detail, he fought from his saddlebags, not from cover. Everything he needed, ammunition, water, extra pistol, within reach. While outlaws scrambled and repositioned, Reeves stayed methodical. 4 outlaws dead, 8 remaining. Then something shifted. Reeves threw 1 set of shackles hard against a boulder 20 yards north. The clang echoed. 2 shooters fired at the sound. Reeves marked their positions, fired twice. 2 more dropped. The human cost. A bullet grazed his left shoulder. Blood soaked through his shirt. Reeves barely registered it. Pain was information, not a problem. And then, distance gunfire. Creek tribal police heard the fight, were riding in from the east. The second player entering the game. Webb's gang heard it too. Horses, shouting. The trap was collapsing. What happened next defined Reeves's legend. His voice boomed through the canyon. Not a shout, a command, the kind that cuts through chaos and finds the fear. Chains or coffins? Choose now. The words hung in the air like a verdict. 4 seconds passed. Then weapons started dropping. Webb's gang broke. Some ran. 4 dropped their rifles, hands raised, faces pale. Reeves emerged from cover, Winchester still raised, blood running down his arm. The shackles clanked as he walked, each step deliberate, closing distance. On your knees, hands behind your heads. They obeyed. The story goes Reeves spoke in commands, not threats. No bargaining, no explanations, just certainty. While the 4 surrendered outlaws knelt in the dirt, Reeves moved through the canyon checking bodies. 8 dead. He removed each man's hat. An old habit, some say a mark of respect even for outlaws. Creek police arrived, counted bodies, verified the scene, then let Reeves proceed. He's got it handled, their leader said. The twist nobody expected. Jim Webb himself was among the first dead. The tree sniper Reeves shot in the opening seconds. Webb had positioned himself in the oak, thinking height gave advantage, but Reeves had identified him immediately. The only shooter in that exact tree. The only position that matched Thomas's scouting report. Webb died not knowing he'd been mapped weeks before. The mystery started forming as Reeves searched Webb's body. A letter. Sealed. Creek police watched as Reeves opened it. The name written inside, the Fort Smith informant feeding Webb information, made Reeves's face go still. Hard. One of the kneeling prisoners asked quietly, "How'd you know where we were?" Reeves didn't answer. Just pulled out the 4 sets of shackles. Perfect count. Perfect. Started locking wrists. The iron clicked shut. Final, certain, exactly as planned. 15 minutes total. Ambush to chains. 8 dead. 4 prisoners shackled in pairs. The canyon smelled like gunpowder, blood and dust. Reeves wrapped his shoulder wound with a strip of shirt. Tight, functional, no wasted motion. The Creek police offered to take the prisoners. Reeves shook his head. "I'll walk them back. 40 miles to Fort Smith. The human detail that shows the legend's cost." Reeves checked each body again, spoke a short prayer in Creek, then arranged them in a line. He didn't celebrate, didn't smile, just did the work. The 4 sets of shackles, perfectly used, exactly as he'd predicted. Gunpowder smoke hung in the air. Blood darkened the dirt. The silence after gunfire has its own weight. Reeves stood there for a moment, looking at Webb's body. The letter was still in his coat pocket. The name inside, Deputy Marshal Samuel Crow. Reeves's former partner. The man he'd ridden with for 6 years. The man who taught him the canyon routes. The twist cut deeper than the shoulder wound. Trust broken. Friendship weaponized. The Creek police chief asked, "You all right, Bass?" Reeves nodded. No explanation. The prisoners were lined up, shackled wrist to wrist. Reeves mounted Domino, tied the lead chain to his saddle horn, started riding. The prisoners walked behind. No horses for them, no mercy. The shackles cut into their wrist with every step. 40 miles. One of them asked again during the first mile, "How'd you know?" Reeves stayed silent. The answer, the inside intelligence, the counter trap, the betrayal he'd already suspected, that stayed locked inside. Some truths don't need speaking. The walk back took 3 days. 4 shackled men stumbling through heat and dust. Reeves rode ahead, bleeding slowly through his makeshift bandage, saying nothing. Creek settlements watched them pass. The legend walking death in chains through Indian territory like a demonstration. On the second day, 1 prisoner collapsed. Reeves waited 15 minutes, then got him moving again. No water breaks beyond necessity, no conversation. The newspapers back in Fort Smith were already running the story. Reeves survives ambush, 8 outlaws dead. The public version was simple, heroic, clean. The hidden truth was in Reeves' coat pocket. Webb's letter, Samuel Crow's name, the betrayal map. At night, while prisoners slept chained to trees, Reeves studied the letter by firelight. It detailed martial movements for 3 months, warrant schedules, backup assignments, every piece of intelligence Webb needed to stay ahead. Crow's handwriting, Crow's seal, the man Reeves trusted. The human element, one prisoner asked quietly, "You gonna kill us too?" Reeves looked at him. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. Judge Parker wants you alive, so you'll stay alive. The shackles clinked with every step, a rhythm that became almost musical over 40 miles. Cutting wrists raw, leaving marks that would scar. Fort Smith appeared on the third day, buildings rising from flatland, the courthouse visible a mile out. Reeves's silence never broke. The crowd gathered as he rode in. 4 prisoners in chains, blood-stained shirt, face showing nothing. The Creek police had sent a rider ahead with news. Everyone knew. Judge Parker stood on the courthouse steps waiting. The mystery that was about to crack Fort Smith open. Who helped the Webb gang? Nobody knew yet. Nobody but Reeves. Judge Isaac Parker's courtroom smelled like wood polish and old tobacco. The 4 prisoners stood before the bench, still shackled. Parker, the hanging judge who'd sentenced over 160 men to death, looked at them like he'd already written their verdicts. Then he looked at Reeves. 8 dead. Yes, sir. You injured. Shoulder graze. It'll heal. Parker nodded. Public celebration rippled through Fort Smith. Reeves defeats dozen outlaws ran in 3 newspapers. The legend grew. But in Parker's private chambers, an hour later, Reeves handed him Webb's letter. Parker read it twice. His face darkened. Samuel Crow. Yes, sir. Your partner. Former partner. The real logistics of what happened next. Reeves tracked the betrayal through evidence like he tracked fugitives through territory. He requested custody records, cross-referenced them with Webb's escapes, mapped Crow's duty schedules against outlaw movements. The pattern emerged clean. Crow had been feeding intelligence for at least a year. Money or leverage, Reeves didn't know which. Didn't matter. The chain of evidence led to Crow's arrest within 48 hours. The shackles Reeves handed to the bailiff were bloodstained. 4 sets, all used. Parker kept them as evidence. Crow was brought in that evening, denied everything at first. Then Reeves produced the letter. Webb's handwriting asking for marshal positions. Crow's handwriting responding. Dates, times, names. The discovery shattered Fort Smith's marshal service. If one deputy could turn, how many others might? The twist nobody wanted to face. The informant was Reeves' former partner, the man who'd taught him canyon routes, introduced him to creek contacts, rode beside him for 6 years. Trust isn't something you lose. It's something that gets weaponized and fired back at you. Crow's badge was stripped that night. Trial set for 2 weeks. Parker's verdict was already certain. The scandal broke Fort Smith open. Deputy Marshal arrested. Conspiracy with murderers. Inside intelligence sold to the highest bidder. Samuel Crow's trial lasted 3 days. Reeves testified once. Short, factual, cold. Described finding the letter on Webb's body, identified the handwriting, provided the timeline. Never looked at Crow directly. The jury deliberated 40 minutes. Guilty. 10 years federal prison. The immediate fallout. Trust collapsed in the marshal service. Men who'd ridden together for years started questioning each other. Judge Parker ordered an internal review. Every case Crow touched, examined. Every arrest, every warrant, every tip. Some convictions were overturned. Some fugitives escaped because evidence was tainted. The personal cost for Reeves ran deeper than the shoulder wound. He'd trusted Crow, taught him tracking, shared creek contacts, rode into ambushes together and came out clean. That partnership, years of it, was retroactively poisoned. Every moment now carried doubt. How long had Crow been selling information? Which tips were real? Which arrests were setups? Verifiable context. After 1895, Reeves worked increasingly alone, turned down new partners, took long-range warrants that kept him in Indian territory for weeks. The isolation wasn't tactical, it was survival. You can't betray someone who doesn't trust you. The human echo. Reeves kept Webb's letter. Never showed his wife. Never filed it as evidence after Crow's conviction. Just kept it in his coat pocket like a reminder. Some say it was there when he died 15 years later. The informant's badge was melted down. Fort Smith tried to move forward, but the weight of betrayal, the knowledge that legends can be sold for cash, that never fully lifted. Moral weight settled over the whole service. Loyalty versus survival in a world where lawmen could become criminals without changing their daily routine. The line between was thinner than anyone wanted to admit. 12 years later. Muskogee, Oklahoma, 1907. Bass Reeves stood on a retirement ceremony stage while white officials praised the legendary Negro lawman. 3,000 arrests over 32 years, 14 men killed in justified defense, 0 bullet wounds taken. The numbers sounded impossible even to people who'd watched his career. They presented him a silver badge, ceremonial, polished. But Reeves stared past the ceremony at a museum display. 4 sets of iron shackles on black velvet, rust visible along the joints, blood traces still embedded in the metal. The Webb gang shackles, the ones from 1895. The public story was clean. 8 killed, 4 captured. Headlines, newspaper archives, official records. What they didn't know, what the ceremony didn't mention, was the private burden. 14 men Reeves killed, hundreds he shackled. The weight of each decision, each bullet, each chain clicking shut. The retired marshal's mind wasn't in Muskogee. It was in that canyon, counting muzzle flashes, identifying positions, throwing shackles against rock to create phantom sounds, the wound that still ached when weather changed, the letter in his coat, Crow's betrayal, that he'd carried for 12 years. The legendary quote everyone remembered, "The law ain't kind, but it's certain." Reeves said it once to a reporter in 1902. It became a motto. But what people missed was the cost of that certainty, the psychological weight of being right every time, of surviving when others didn't, of never losing, never being shot, never failing a warrant, never walking into a fight unprepared. That kind of perfection isn't freedom. It's a sentence. The shift happened quietly during the ceremony, from control to haunted certainty, from legend to man. The shackles in the display case caught afternoon light the same way they'd caught sunlight that day in Creek Nation, swinging from Domino's saddle horn, promising justice or death. Bass Reeves died January 12, 1910, in Muskogee, 69 years old. The shackles from the Webb gang ambush were passed to his family, eventually given to a museum where they still sit behind glass. Public legacy, greatest U.S. Marshal in American history. The first black deputy marshal west of the Mississippi. Over 3,000 arrests. 32 years of service. 14 justified kills. 0 injuries. The numbers defined him in obituaries. But the hidden cost, the psychological weight of perfect survival, that wasn't in any newspaper. The friends betrayed, the years working alone, the nights checking weapons and counting shackles and mapping territories in his head because trust was a luxury he couldn't afford after 1895. The final image mirrors the first, those same iron shackles, catching light through museum glass. Blood-stained, rust-covered, still closed, the ones he carried into Creek Nation, the ones that clinked against Domino's saddle, the ones that broke 12 outlaws in 15 minutes. They never fully opened again after that day. Museum policy keeps them locked. A preservation choice. But it feels like something else. A metaphor nobody intended. Some chains you carry to catch criminals. Others you carry because certainty has a price. The warning Reeves never spoke but lived. Perfection in a violent world isn't triumph. It's isolation. The knowledge that every fight you survive is another weight added. Another choice examined. Another scar invisible to everyone watching. The legend stayed. The man underneath, the one who checked rifle loads 12 times and counted shackles and spoken commands because hesitation meant death. That part stayed locked, like those shackles, closed, preserved. The story ended where it began, with iron, with certainty, with the weight of what it cost to never lose.